Hello. Today is November the 18th, 1993. My name is Arvil Wrigley. I'm a volunteer with the Friends of the Collinsville Historical Museum, which is cooperating with a statewide effort to collect oral histories from Illinois citizens that participated in the events surrounding World War II. We're in the home of Mr. Irving Dilliard, who lives at 407 Crestwood Drive in Collinsville, Illinois, zip code 62234. Mr. Dilliard served in a branch of the United States Armed Forces during World War II. We are interviewing him about his experiences in that war. Irving, would you please start by introducing yourself to us, and please give your full name, the place and date of birth, and we would also like to have the names of each of your parents.
My full name is Irving Lee, L-E-E, Dilliard. My date of birth was November the 27th, which, as in view of the date we're here together now, is coming up very shortly. And I was born in 1904, so I'll be 89 on that day. My father's name was James Irving Dilliard, and my mother was Mary Beadle, B-E-E-D-L-E, Look Dilliard. That is, she and my father were husband and wife.
Yeah. Did you have any brothers or sisters?
Yes, I had my father was married before, and his first wife died when a daughter was born. And I had a brother who died about 10 years ago.
What was his name?
David.
David. What was life like for you before the war, and especially during 1941?
I was on the St. Louis Post-Dispatch beginning with my graduation year from college, which was 1927. Actually, I had been working for the Collinsville Herald way back in high school days, and I have any number of clippings of things I wrote and pasted into books at that time. But after I got out of college, I went to the Post-Dispatch. Actually went there on a stormy day when I thought they'd be short of help covering a hurricane, tornado in parts of St. Louis, and got started, and that was the way my career began. I was a reporter first and then became an editorial writer, and did that until time when I went into the service in 1943.
What thoughts did you have about the war before the United States became involved in the conflict?
Well, I didn't like what was going on in Germany much of that time. Hitler and the Nazis and what they were doing. It was very bad. And I didn't like what they had done in World War in the first part of the war.
Mm-hmm. Did you hear the December 7th, 41 radio announcement about the bombing of Pearl Harbor?
Yes, I did.
Where were you and what were you doing at that time?
That was 1940.
41?
41. Yes, I was on the Post-Dispatch at the time.
That's where you heard it, at the Post-Dispatch?
No, my recollection is I heard it on radio at home.
At home. What was your reaction and the response of other people around you?
Well, they all thought Japan had done a seriously wrong thing in bombing Pearl Harbor.
Had you formed any prior opinion or developed any feeling about what had been taking place in Europe or Asia up to that time?
Oh, I'd paid some attention to it. It happened that my emphasis as a on the Post-Dispatch after I went from a reporter to an editorial writer, my emphasis was on the United States Supreme Court, and others on the paper or on the staff emphasized international affairs and so on.
Well, it's obvious, but do you recall reading newspaper accounts of German aggression in Europe?
Oh yes, oh yes. Yeah, oh that was serious, and I had nothing but a growing concern about where it was going to lead the world.
Mm-hmm. Did you have any knowledge of Hitler's speeches, ideas, or actions?
Oh yes, I thought he was misleading not only Germany but a lot of other people, and that he would have to be turned out somehow or other by the German people. If not, we'd have to be defeated in military hostilities.
What events led you to the entry into the military service? And you weren't in any branch of the service or any reserve or anything at that time?
Not really. I did have an interest in military training, though, and way back when I was in college, I went one summer up to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and served in something called CMTC, and those letters stood for Citizens Military Training Corps. Mm-hmm. So I had an early interest in being prepared for what the future might bring.
Well, was your response to entering a military service influenced by family or friends or attitude toward the war, the threat to national security, or any other consideration?
It seemed to me that this was going to be a very serious situation in which the whole country was going to have to participate, and I told that to my chief at the Post-Dispatch, Joseph Pulitzer, and explained to him that I was going to take a leave. He felt I should just simply stay on the paper. He didn't seem to think I needed to, but I pointed out that he had had a kind of a connection in World War I and so on. But at any rate, I felt it was coming and was necessary.
When and where were you inducted?
I was commissioned in 1943, July the 12th, in St. Louis, and went from there up to Fort Custer in Michigan, and entered active duty there in what was called a military government school, Class 6, basic specialist it was. And that went on for through the month of August. And I had an interesting experience there that I think I'll report. I had hardly gotten to Camp Fort Custer until a very pleasant fellow from out in Kansas, who was one of the many ones who were in the group, came to me, and we got acquainted, and he came to see me from time to time, and we talked about things, and he'd ask me a question now and then, and I didn't know what his assignment was. It happened that I had, I guess, raised some questions by the progressive character of the Post-Dispatch, and I think by that time I had written some pieces for the magazines like The Nation and The New Republic, and that may have raised some questions about what my character and quality would be like, and whether I was trustworthy in the military, and why I was going in. And so this new friend from Kansas, Captain Ralph Hayden Cole, had been recruited by the military to check on me and ask me questions from time to time and give me answers and take my answers down and report them and let the authorities check them over to see whether or not I was dependable and should be continued into the military.
How old were you at that time?
Well, 1943, well, that would be 39, having been born in 1904. If it had been 44, then I would have been just 40 years old. I was around 39.
39.
And there were very few were being drafted at that age. Most of them were, and the people that age were volunteers.
What happened at this, or what type training did you get there? Was that just basic military training?
Yes, it was basic military training, but we also emphasized things that we were going to be centering in, because from Fort Custer in Michigan, I was to go to the School of Military Government at the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia. And when the Fort Custer work was completed, I went very shortly after that, September the 1st. I reported for duty at the School of Military Government. And that went on for September and October and most of November. And the emphasis there was on the use of the military to direct and guide things. And the expectation was that we would be setting up government in Europe just as fast as we could after hostilities in a certain area.
What did you think of the training that you received there?
It was very good. We had high-ranking officers who trained us, and so on. That was all completed about the end of November, as I've just said. And then we were given a bit of leave from November, late November, about Thanksgiving time. We were allowed to go home and stay until the day after Christmas. And I was at home with my family for that length of time. But immediately after that, before the end of the month, I was due back at Fort Hamilton on Long Island, which was a staging area. And it was from there that I boarded a ship and went to Europe. That took place on December the 31st, and I went aboard the Queen Elizabeth it was in New York Harbor, and believe it or not, there were 16,000 troops on that ship, units even from Australia. And where you slept was yours for only 8 hours. You got up and left, and then another personnel came in and took it for the next 8 hours, and then he got up and other personnel took it for 8 hours.
A three-shift bed, huh?
That's right. Mm-hmm. That's
How did they feed the troops there on that ship? Was that the same kind of a situation there? Or?
Yeah, it was really a miracle that they were able to cope with it, but they did. And we left on the 31st of December, last day of the year, or that is boarded it, and then on January the 1st, the Queen Elizabeth departed. And 7 days later, on the 8th, we arrived at Greenock, Scotland. That's where the Firth of Clyde is. And the ship had gone way north, Iceland, Greenland, far north, because the Nazis had indicated that they were going to torpedo it and sink it in the ocean. And actually, we were told to keep our clothes on all the time, so that if the ship was hit, we could at least have our clothes on, as we had to cope with the problem. But we got so far north that we were not attacked by the Nazi torpedoes at all.
What was your military unit? What did you do? What was your name of your outfit?
Well, I became in a part of the military called a PWD, and that was Psychological Warfare Division, and it was a part of what was called SHAEF. SHAEF stood for Supreme Headquarters, American Expeditionary Force, SHAEF. And I was in the intelligence section of that.
What were you assigned to do after arriving there?
The Psychological Warfare Division had a whole series of odd and peculiar things. And I might say that I've always in life have been interested in trying to make my contribution towards something that was new and developing. And psychological warfare was a new thing. And military government, which came after the hostilities, that was something new or different. So I worked with those.
Could you tell us something about the psychological warfare? What kind of things did you do there?
Well, the psychological warfare is so diverse, and it went into so many different aspects of life and people's habits that books have been written about it. But I will give an example that will tell you what one of the things that we were up to. Here at home in those days, we had something called food stamps, war food stamps. And you use those to get your share of food. The idea was that you got only so many stamps, uh, and then when you used your stamps for the week, you didn't have any more to use, so that restricted how much you bought and used of the food because those things were sensitive. Well, anyway, uh, we knew, of course, that food stamps were required in Germany. And one of the things, the psychological warfare, psychological warfare workers did was to print German food stamps and find ways to get them behind the lines and over among the civilians in Germany. And I brought home with me some of the stamps, and here's they're on this right here. Some for Fleisch, that would be meat, and Brot is bread, and Käse, that would be cheese, and so on. And the idea was that we put quantities of these stamps behind the German lines so the civilians would have them. And then they would have many more stamps than they were entitled to use. And that tangled up their food operations and so on. And that was, I give that as an understandable example of the kind of thing that the psychological warfare people did to make a contribution to the progress of the war.
How did they deliver this type of thing? Was that
well, they had different ways. One was to drop some from planes, and then it was surprising how often you could slip something behind the lines where there was a break and so on, and get them over there. All you had to do was leave a box of them somewhere or something of the sort like that.
Do you remember anything else that they done like that might help follow up the system there?
Well, dropped papers that didn't tell the truth, that gummed up their knowledge of what was going on, and would make them less eager to continue a war against the Allies.
Did you have what means did you have for printing these ration stamps and the other things that were used in the psychological warfare? Was that a part of your?
Well, it's amazing how able they were to get things like that done. A part of it was rather limited, but I knew these other things were going on all the time, and I sort of tipped my hat to them because it struck me as a part of the war that didn't cause a lot of people to go up onto the lines and be shot at.
Mm-hmm.
It was a means of messing up the war at home for the people, for the German people.
What did you think of our nation's war efforts up to that point?
Well, they were going along pretty well. I went, of course, from England to with troops over to, well, really, we landed right at the edge of Belgium, and then into France, and across France, of course, and time came when we were finally got to Germany, of course.
What can you tell us about your experience of entering your first combat zone?
The what?
Your experience in entering your first combat zone.
Well, that was a very serious place because you never could be sure where it was going to be. That was determined by the enemy. It would create the combat zone that you hadn't been prepared for, and I was lucky to get through any number of those situations without being injured or hurt in any way.
Can you give us any little specifics about any of these combat areas, that interesting things that may have happened?
Mm-hmm. Well, they were outside of Paris, up in where France and heads toward Germany, and part of Belgium is involved there, and so on. And the line kept going further and further toward Germany, and of course into Germany too in time.
Could you list for us, in order of their occurrences, all subsequent combat actions in which you were involved?
Well, it's hard to remember all of those things. I should have made a more complete record of them, something I wouldn't have to trust my memory for, but was in on and written them down. I have some instances of one thing and another, but not as much as I should have.
Mm-hmm. Taking these one at a time in chronological order, please tell us in full detail, if possible, about the approximate number and types of casualties, how they occurred, and how they were treated in these battle zones that you were in.
Well, there were always situations where people were injured. Sometimes your colleagues, maybe you might have been down below the level, but even so, injuries occurred, and they had to be removed and taken to medical assistance that followed right very close to the combat itself.
Did your mental attitude change as this combat continued and you got into these areas?
I don't remember any particular change. I hoped and hoped it wouldn't last indefinitely, that it would, that the Germans would collapse somehow or other, and the time would come when it would be over, and we could go from there to other aspects of what our duties were in Europe.
What did you think about the war so far up to that time?
Well, it was going really right well, and things were happening that had not happened before in wartime. New methods and achievements that were all to the good.
Did you write many letters home?
Yes, I did. I wrote quite a few of them home. I used the V-mail and uh, uh,
Could you tell us anything about the V-mail system? How did that work?
it worked right well. You got a letter or a folder that you wrote on and then folded it up, and it indicated that this was V-mail on the outside, and it got special treatment and was sent back home for you. Uh, I have one amusing recollection of the V-mail. This, however, was in England before we got to Europe, the continent. I was going out to another headquarters in England that day. I got onto a military vehicle to go, and I sat next to another officer, and I noticed his shoes, and I relaced his shoes according to my way of relacing them and making them more comfortable. And I relaced one shoe for him, and he liked it, and he had me relace the other shoe. And he said, you don't know this at all, but he said, you've shown this to a shoe manufacturer. He said, I run a shoe manufacturing plant in Texas. And he said, I'm going to get a piece of V-mail stationery just as soon as I can and draw a chart and show how this is done, and use dotted lines underneath and straight lines across and top. And he said, that'll be a very useful piece of V-mail stationery going back to my shoe manufacturer in Texas. He said that he could hardly believe his experience.
Do you remember this fellow's name?
No, I really don't. I wish I did, but I can see him very well. Since I've enjoyed, had a funny experience with him, I'll give another one. I was going out from London to another headquarters out on the coast, and I got into the military vehicle and sat down, and it wasn't long before a young woman came in, and she was in an English military nurse's uniform, and she sat down. And after a while, I said to her, I don't want to be prodding, but what are you looking forward to when you get out to the new base? And she said, well, the thing I'm looking forward to is a cup of that good American coffee. And I said, oh, is that so? Well, that's interesting. She said, well, what are you looking forward to? And I said, well, I'm looking forward to a cup of that good English tea. So we traded likes on the two countries, but I mustn't deal with such trivial as that.
Did you receive many letters or packages? And if you did, how often did you get letters and packages from home?
I got them fairly frequently. Mm-hmm. Every now and then it would appear that one had gone astray somewhere. It was always hard to have them catch up with you, but you got them, most of them, I guess, on the whole.
What type of things did you get in these packets?
Well, those were actually, I didn't get much in the way of packets. One of the things that some of the troops wanted from home was packages of cigarettes, because they were hard to get in Europe. uh, the way we had them here.
Hmm.
So I wasn't in line for that kind of packet.
Did you forge any close bonds with friendships with many of or some of the other combat companions?
Uh, yes, some, not too close, because you stayed with your own
Mhm.
group working on psychological warfare, whatever your mission was.
Could you give any names of anybody that you remember that you were working with at that time, and or any story about your friendship with that person?
Well, one of the people I met overseas was and I was always glad I met him, was Bill Malden, who was a cartoonist, and he did a book called um, Up Front, and I got a copy of it years ago, and in it are his cartoons about Willie and Joe, and these are the Willie and Joe are the soldiers that he drew funny pictures about, and they turned up in various places, including Stars and Stripes, the military paper, and so on.
Hold it up so I can see it. Perfect. The book. There you go. And
Bill Malden wrote in this book for me a long time ago. He drew a picture of a World War veteran with a service cap on and all, and he wrote, "For Irv Dilliard, that notorious minion of Shafe, from a mutinous pencil pusher, Bill Malden." And that was long back in the 50s, soon after we'd gotten together out here in this country.
Have you remained in contact with any of your World War II companions?
The group that we met that got together at Fort Custer, and then a lot of them went on to the University of Virginia for the School of Military Government. We became very good friends, about 20 of us, 20, 25, some such number as that. And we tried to have annual meetings after the war. They were a diverse group: businessmen, educators, not many, but 2 or 3 journalists, and so on. And we called ourselves the Eager Beavers. And we had a good time getting together and swapping experiences and so on. We met in different places for quite a while. They're practically all gone now. I'm one of the very, very few that's left.
Could you name some of those who are still living yet, besides yourself?
But you know, that's something I was just about to do, to check and see if there were any others still living. There couldn't be more than 1 or 2, if that many. Many of those who were younger than I went before this. I have the names of them. Fact is, this is a little book called the company roster of the Military Government School, Class B Specialists, at Fort Custer in Michigan. But these, so many of them went on to the University of Virginia, and then their names are all in this, and what they did, and how they happened, where they came from, and their specialties, and so on. And I had them all sign this one book, and their names are all written in as well as printed. And I looked at it not long ago, and it's pathetic how they've all gone into the next world, and I'm one of the very, very few that's left.
They were all members of SHAFE.
Yes, that's right. Mm-hmm.
Who was the commanding general of this group at the time?
We had a general by the name of McClure, who really came from up in a part of Illinois, born in it, but left, went into the military a long time ago. He was head of the psychological warfare.
Did you ever have to help retrieve a wounded buddy from a field of combat?
Well, I wouldn't say it from combat, but I did it from bombings, because there were times, even in England,
Mm-hmm.
when you wouldn't know a bombing was coming until it was there, and people were injured seriously, and some killed at times, in Nazi bombings.
Can you tell us any specific story about that?
Only just helping move somebody who had been hurt, but I don't know any, don't recall any details about other than getting them into maybe into a vehicle or something of the sort to move them from where the bombing happened.
I see. During your combat duty, did you ever capture any enemy prisoners?
Do what enemy?
Was you ever involved in capturing any enemy prisoners?
Others did the capturing, but I wouldn't say that I was a capturer. My group was less in hostilities as such,
Mm-hmm.
except when hostilities pushed far enough to involve us.
Prior to the end of the war, were you aware that any civilian concentration camps existed?
Concentration camps?
Yes. If so, please explain how you learned about them and how much you knew at that time.
Well, that's one of the things that we did learn about, and you found it out sometimes by people who escaped from the other side,
Mm-hmm.
watched their chance, and came and told about what was going on back there. And so we learned about the concentration camps of Dachau and Auschwitz and the others where Hitler was killing, the Nazis under Hitler were killing Jews by in large numbers.
Did you help liberate any of these enemy prison camps or concentration camps?
Well, I wouldn't say that I did, but that the forces that I was with did.
Mm-hmm.
We would follow them and go on to the new ground.
Could you please describe your impressions of the circumstances you found in the camps?
Of the what?
The circumstances you
Oh.
found at the camps when you saw them?
Mm-hmm. Well, sometimes you found many bodies lying on the ground where they had been killed and left to lie by the Nazi killers. And you turned up, and there they were.
What was the highlight occurrence of combat experience for you?
Well, I would have to scratch my head to try to figure out what stood above anything else. Again, my concern was primarily working during hostilities with psychological warfare, which had the purpose that I've previously described, and we made our contribution toward
I don't know, you hadn't got finished with that, did you?
I had finished it.
Oh, okay.
And
You'll have to give us a signal when you're ready to do it.
Ready?
Tell us what you and the other men did to celebrate America's traditional family holidays such as Thanksgiving and Christmas.
well, it was hard to keep track of those occasions because you wouldn't have turkey for Thanksgiving, for example. But I did have some remarkable experiences one way and another. On April the 12th in 1945, I attended a memorial service for President Roosevelt. He died, of course. And at Schaeff, there was a memorial service up forward. Hostilities still going on, you see. VE Day hadn't come yet. And General Eisenhower was at that service, and I was pleased to be able to find a way to get to it and attend it. And on May the 8th, when VE Day came, I was had gone back into France and was at the Reims Cathedral and Schaeff and service. Then, of course, VE Day has come now, and June the 10th, I went to a place I had never been, but I knew the name of the man who lived there. He was named Franz Lehar, Lehar, and he was a musician and played beautiful music. A lot of people will remember the name of Lehar. And so I went with a couple of other American officers, and we went up to Bad Ischl, Badisuhl, and that's where he lived. And he had written some very famous music that was used by the Germans for, but he was not a Nazi, and just the opposite. And we had a very happy visit with friends and Lehar and his wife. And I asked him if he would go to the piano and play one of his numbers. And he said he hadn't been to the piano for days and days. And I suggested this would be a good time to do it again, and he did. And I heard him play one of his well-known numbers. Then I got into very heavily into an aspect of military government that I was supposed to have had some training for, and that was the licensing of non-Nazi German newspapers. And we did that all over parts of Germany, licensed in Ingolstadt and Kempten and Bayreuth, and I even kept the names of editors that we checked and were convinced would not be Nazi in any way, would be for the New Germany. One of my strong recollections took place at the Lenzburg prison, and that was where a lot of Nazis were to be executed. At that time, I was doing some work for Stars and Stripes in addition to what else I was doing. I was connected with Stars and Stripes for a couple of months that summer. And at Lenzburg prison, 28 Nazi killers from the concentration camps were to be executed. 14 the first day, 14 the second day, 7 in the morning, 7 in the afternoon. They were required to go up the steps to does that bother us or not? Go up the steps to a platform and stand on that platform while a rope was put around the neck. And then after the neck was tied with a rope, the platform was pulled, and there he hanged until he was dead. And by that time, or that period, we had licensed a good many new German newspapers, and I thought it would be very desirable to have some of the editors, not newly licensed, to come for the overnight for the second day and see the executions with their own eyes, so that when they when they were printed in their papers, it was what they had seen and had described themselves. So others felt the same way, and after the executions of the 12 of the ones in the morning and afternoon of the first day, I got on the telephone, got some other officers on the telephone. We called German editors all over Bavaria and elsewhere, and told them what was going to happen and urged them to come. And one memory that I'll never forget was about one of the editors that we had recently put on the job. And he told me afterwards that he could hardly believe his eyes, because what he saw was this. He said he had been in a concentration camp and was one of those that the Nazis were going to kill. But he got out waited for a chance and ran out of the building, the quarters. But they had already begun to shoot in another part of the building. And he ran along the road to get out, and he heard them coming. And he dropped down along the side of the road as if he were dead. And he said, as the killers came out, one of them kicked him, just in a sense testing him, and he just acted like he was completely lifeless. And the killer went on, and he told me that the fella he saw, one of the ones he saw hang that day, was the one who had kicked him as he came along the road. He said he could hardly believe his eyes in that experience. So it told you what strange and odd things can happen. One thing I do want to refer to is the time I went to, the hostilities were over now, and a lot of the American military included different aspects of life, and some of them were military chaplains. Some of them were even had religious backgrounds and before they'd gotten into the service. And there were a lot of Catholic chaplains in uniform. And they wanted to go down. They had made arrangements to go down to Rome, and because most of them had never been there, and this was an opportunity. So they got a special train set up and did have a place to start it in Germany and right near Switzerland and head for Rome. Well, it seemed to me that this was a chance that maybe I ought to make the most of it. We were going to be gone only about 3 days altogether, down and at Rome and then right back. So I went with them. And the time came when we were in front of the Vatican, and the Pope was coming around shaking hands with people, and many of them had boxes that they had crucifixes in. And the Pope was going to bless those boxes of crucifixes so those chaplains in the military could go back home and hand these to friends, relatives, and so on, and they would be ones that the Pope had blessed. And I didn't have any crucifixes to have him bless, but I did have a little toy monkey that I carried in my pocket that I'd gotten just before I left to go into the service from a neighbor who had been to India, and they had gotten this little monkey in India. He's a sweet little fellow, holding up his hands, praying, and sitting on his backside with his knees up and his elbows down on the tops of his knees, and there he is. Well, I felt that I'd like to carry something in the military experience always with me, so I had him in my pocket. And when I couldn't put any crucifixes before the Pope, I did put my hands up like some of them had, and the little monkey was in one top hand like that. And when he came along, he pressed his hand on top of mine as if to say, "What are you holding there?" He didn't say anything, but that's how I interpreted it. So I opened up my hand and held up the little monkey praying right to the Pope, and Pope Pius the 12th, Roman numeral 10 and then 2 ones, uh, uh, smiled, not a big laugh, but a very pleasant change in expression. And so then he, after blessing the monkey, so to speak, with a smile at least, and he went on. But the monkey's always, I never see him that I'm not with Pope the 12th and Pius the 12th and all those chaplains from the military who had gone to Rome for just a short time.
Could I see that?
Yes, you may, by all means.
Actually, you know what it looks like? It looks like the monkey, speak no evil.
Yeah.
Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil.
That's
what we're looking at here.
I think that's maybe why I think you're right. Hear no evil, see no evil, speak no evil. And maybe the Pope was already familiar with that thought.
When and how did you return to the United States after the war, end of the war?
I'll go into that, but there's one other thing I do want to tell you about that I may find another one or two, but I do want to tell you about this. I was assigned down to Munich for a while in the military government days. And there was a lake down there south of Munich that we had a headquarters on, and I'd gone down there and was there. And there came a day when I was to have at least attend a gathering of officers almost to the Swiss line down south of Munich. And there was I got a military vehicle and had to go down there. And I left the place where I was staying before daylight. And I came to a little place. I looked it up afterward to make dead sure, because I never wanted to forget the name of this place. It was Wolfratshausen. Wolfratshausen. Hausen being house, you know, and Wolfratshausen. As I say, I got away, started before daylight. And the sun was just beginning to come up when we got to Wolfratshausen. And there was I looked ahead and I saw someone hands on a wheelbarrow of some kind. And I got closer, and I could see that it was a woman coming this way toward me. I could see her face. And as we had to get over a little, quite a bit, so as not to bother her, the woman, I saw that she had a hand on one handle, and over on the other side there was no hand. She just had a long roping thing to hold it with, and that was how she was moving, apparently, manure from a barn out to the fields. And I thought, I took off my hat to her, so to speak, thinking that there was partially an explanation of why the Germans had done as well as they had done in the war. She wasn't a fighter, but she was an example of how hard the German people could work. up before daylight and hauling that manure. Believe it or not, after I had gone some miles to where the meeting was held, been there through the lunch hour and all afternoon, and then came back through Wolfratshausen. Believe it or not, it was sundown then, getting almost dark. And this woman was still out with her wheelbarrow, moving that manure with that arm that didn't have a hand, as well as the arm that did have a hand. And I'll never forget that experience, because it told me something about the German people that was in many ways on the plus side. And it was all I could do not to stop and say something to her. I couldn't have said very much in German anyway, but there it was.
Could you please tell us about your military rank and your decorations, and especially your campaign decorations?
I entered the service as a captain and rose eventually to lieutenant colonel. And I did get some decorations. I got some from both England and France, and from the United States as well.
Could you tell us anything about those decorations? What were they for? And what were they?
The American one was the Bronze Star, and I had gone through a very serious bombing experience, and that helped with the restoration of that situation, people who were hurt and moved and so on.
Was that in Germany or?
No, that was in England. In England, I want to tell you also about an experience I had with when I was connected with the Stars and Stripes. I went to Nuremberg. They had war crimes trials there in Nuremberg, and it was called the International Military Tribunal, and England and France and the United States all went together, and they had a lot of the Nazi leaders, not just killers, but leaders like Goring and Rudolf Hess and Ribbentrop and so on. I have the names of many of them. And they had them there being tried. An American who had was on the Supreme Court, Justice Robert Jackson, was one of the top people at the tribunal. Of course, many of them were convicted. Hermann Goring was to be executed, but he killed himself. He was a suicide just before time to be executed. And Hitler, of course, you remember, killed himself. He didn't, he knew what was coming, and so he in a sense took advantage of it because he didn't want to go through with it. war crimes trials there at Nuremberg dealt with almost 200 Nazi killers, leaders, and so on. So I didn't get to stay there very long, but I did have a couple of days there and saw what was taking place. Then the time came, of course, when I was to come back. In 1946, I was still licensing German newspapers in places like Bamberg and Coburg and so on, Landshut, and in July, I see my notes show that I got the Army Commendation Medal. In July and August, I was at a place called Altdorf, and the Stars and Stripes was being published there then. And August, first few days in August, I went down to a memorable experience. I never will forget it. In one day, I was to go to the Holy Land, so to speak. I was in Italy at the time, assigned at Rome briefly. This is 1946. And I got on a plane in Rome, a military plane, and I told the pilot that while I had seen the Roman ruins on the ground, had been into the Colosseum and so on, it would be a memorable experience just to see it from the air as I left. And he said, "Oh yes, we can do that." And he said, "I'll take you over the top of Mount Vesuvius as well." So we did that. And I saw the ruins of Rome down on the ground. Time came after having gone along the leg of Italy. We went over toward Greece to head toward the Holy Land, Egypt, and so on. And believe it or not, about midday, I could look down and see the Acropolis in Venice, in Athens, in Rome, in Greece. And I was impressed to think that I had just seen Rome, and now I was seeing the things that had made the architecture of Greece so famous in the world. And the plane went along, turned over, crossed the waters, and headed up the Nile. And just as the sun was setting, he circled over the pyramid and the Sphinx. And I said to myself, I cannot believe that in one day I'm seeing the historic places of Rome, Greece, and Egypt in one showing of the sun in one day. And it was a memorable experience because it put together so many years of history in just a few hours.
Were there things that you would do differently if you could do them over again?
Maybe so, but I hadn't thought of that. I'll do that the next time. I should tell you that I was in 1946 in October. Well, actually in August I went on terminal leave, and then in October was relieved of active duty at Fort Sheridan, just south of Chicago, or in the Chicago area, Fort Sheridan. It's really north rather than south.
Mm-hmm.
And
What was the most difficult thing that you had to do during your military period?
well, the most difficult thing I had to do was to leave my home and my wife and my two children. And uh, uh, I still, in some ways, regret the almost 4 years that I was gone, and they were without my help and assistance.
Is there any one thing that stands out as your most successful achievement in the military?
Well, nothing jumps out, just especially I will think about that, and the next time we meet, I'll try to have it for you.
How did you learn about VE Day, and what was your reaction to it at the time?
That'd be what?
VE Day, Victory in Europe.
Yeah. Well, we knew every day what was going on. The psychological warfare people were kept fully informed about developments and so on.
So you heard about it pretty fast.
That's right. Or practically shared it.
Mm-hmm. How about VJ Day? Where were you then, and what was your reaction there?
That was Japan, you mean?
Japan was
Yeah.
Japan.
There's well, I have something here that does have the well, I thought I had one handy here that had VE Day on it, but I guess I have had so much collected on the war that I brought back and from service that I thought I had that handy here, but I don't have them.
Do you remember where you were?
Yeah, I was in the edge of Germany in France.
Right at the border there, close
Yeah,
to the border.
very close to the border. Yeah.
What was your opinion of the use of the atomic bomb when it was used against the Japanese civilians in August of '45?
Well, I regretted that because it seemed to me unfortunate that people who were not in the military itself had to pay the price of the atomic bomb. Women and children, and some of those probably opposed to what their military was doing,
Mm-hmm.
and they were many of them killed by the atomic bomb.
Has your opinion changed over the last 50 years on the use of the atomic bomb? You haven't changed your mind?
I don't like the idea of that kind of. Fact is, I'm much pleased about the tendency toward peace in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand there are places where you don't have peace, I know what's going on in Bosnia, for example, and I know what happened in the down there in uh, 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 where some of our troops lost their lives a couple of years ago, and so on.
The Desert Storm.
Desert Storm and all. But on the whole, it's a less fighting world than it was, and it does seem to me that that's all to the good.
Do you have a disability rating or a pension, anything like that?
No, I don't.
Okay. Do you have any
Uh,
opinions or feelings about our nation's military status or its policies today?
Well, I think it's more and more desirable that we uh, use our forces for better achievements than just the military. Maybe I'm wrong about this, but I would certainly consider using the forces to stop the bringing in of uh, across the border different things that shouldn't be brought into this country from Cuba and South America and so on. And I'd think that we'd achieve a lot more if we used the military to do that sort of thing than to just simply have them marching around and training for nothing, so to
He's
speak.
been more as a policing
Yeah.
facility.
I don't know that I would get much support on this, but I'd rather see crime in the streets brought under control by, if the military didn't do anything but march in the streets.
Patrol the streets.
Patrol, exactly. I'd think we'd gain a benefit, and I think the military would be pleased to have a chance to do something worthwhile for the country.
Yeah. What is your opinion of the Veterans Administration? Or did you ever had any contact with them?
The Veterans Administration. Yes, a few times, and I do have some insurance that they provided, and glad to support it, and go to VFW and American Legion Affairs. I consider those worth supporting.
Would you like to tell us about how your family supported you during your military service?
What I did was get the military, the United States government paying the military forces. I got them to send practically, not quite all of it, but most of my pay back to my home, so that it could be used for supporting the family. And they did do that.
How did your experience during World War II affect your life since that time? Since then, have you?
Well, it informed me about a lot of things that I wouldn't have been informed about otherwise. And when I came back to the Post-Dispatch, I carried information that I couldn't have had any other way.
Do you feel your wartime contribution to the nation has been appreciated?
Appreciated by
the people of the United States.
Well, I
your
think,
countrymen.
generally speaking, I'd say yes to that. And
Well, Irving, I want to thank you for this interview and for cooperating on this project. And that is the end of the interview.
oh, thank you.